What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my Week 4 college football playoff rankings. As always, I'll be ranking the top 25 teams. But before I get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button to be entered into our giveaway. We'll start with the others receiving votes. And Florida and Missouri obviously are here because of their upset wins last week against K-State and Tennessee. While Washington State is the only team that isn't in the AP rankings that haven't jumped into my rankings yet. But TCU and Kansas, they make a case as well to possibly get in next week. 25 are the K-State Wildcats, losing on a 61-yard field goal on the road against an SEC team. For me, it doesn't make you lose your ranking. I think they do obviously lose 10 spots, but falling out of the top 25 for a heartbreaking loss. And I think they can rebound going against UCF, which should be a good game this week. But now these Wildcats got to bounce back and bounce back quick in that Big 12. You know, the defending Big 12 champions here that not too many people are talking about are still going to be a very good team. They just need to put this one behind them. 24 are the Tennessee Volunteers, and we all know the story that Tennessee struggles in the swamp, and it happened yet again. Joe Milton had a decent game, but it just wasn't enough. And this one really was Tennessee dominated for 3 quarters of football, but that second quarter, they just let Florida score 20 points on them and run all over them, really. That's what it felt like heading into halftime, and it was just too much to overcome. 23 are the Tigers of Clemson. They're moving up after their win against FAU, and now they get Florida State at home, and this is make or break for them already this season. You know, still with the last year, the 4-team playoff, they have to win this game if they want any chance to get into the playoff. And if they lose, not only will they fall out of the top 25, they will lose their chances at the playoff. The Bruins move up 2 spots after a big win, totaling 614 yards on offense and over 400 yards with 6 touchdowns on the ground. And now they go into Utah in what should be a great game to start their Pac-12 debut. If they can get this win here, you might be looking at almost a top 10 team at this time next week, just because going into Utah is a tough place to play. And if Cam Rising's playing and they can beat him with Utah, the environment, UCLA is going to be a very good team. Duke moves up 2 spots here after their beatdown of Northwestern. Nothing really crazy. Riley Leonard had another great game, Jordan Waters as well. But now they get UConn on the road in what should be another easy win, as they should coast to 4-0. 20 are the Miami Hurricanes and took care of business on Thursday night, going on the road to face Temple. Should take care of business yet again, as this Hurricanes team has started to turn some heads, and possibly Mario Cristobal knows what he's doing just in time for ACC play. 19, the Iowa Hawkeyes take care of Western Michigan after a rocky start. Western had a big play on him, a 64-yard touchdown pass. Then after that, 176 total yards for the rest of the game. And this one for me is kind of concerning because now they have to go into Penn State and face that team, which just looked great. And now Cade McNamara is still struggling. Nothing really spectacular. The ground game has been the only consistent force with LaShawn Williams. But if they want to go on the road and beat Penn State, they're going to have to figure out how they can throw the ball efficiently. 18 are the Buffs staying put. And this was just a resilient performance from Colorado. Double overtime win against Colorado State, the rival, and all the hype and anticipation leading up to this game in the media. But they got the job done when it mattered most. Down 10 with 2 minutes to go, figured it out, found ways to win. And that's what makes good teams great, finding ways to win games. And now they have another tough test going on the road to face the Ducks. If they can go in there and get that win, I think you're looking at a team that is actually a college football playoff contender. And then they're going to, silence the media, all the doubters, if they can win that game. But Travis Hunter more than likely is going to be out for this one, which is a huge blow after taking a cheap shot to the ribs. Shador Sanders obviously had another great game, leading his Heisman hopeful. And then Xavier Weaver, his top target, has put up 3 solid games so far for Colorado. And, you got to tune in, must watch television next week at Oregon. 17 are the Sooners. They move up 3 spots after another beatdown of Tulsa. This team has scored 167 points in 3 games, which is not getting enough credit. And that's why I think they're flying under the radar this year in the Big 12. They have their first Big 12 game at Cincinnati this weekend. Dylan Gabriel looks poised and ready to just take over And I think this Oklahoma team, if they get Texas at the right time, if Texas is kind of coasting to wins, I think Oklahoma could pull off the upset this year. 16 is where North Carolina falls. They beat a 2-0 Minnesota team that was pretty good that came into this game, but they just couldn't stop Drake May as he just took over through the air. 2 touchdowns, 414 passing yards. And obviously, you can see there, Nate McCollum had 15 receptions, 165 yards, and a touchdown, which was his top target. And now they go into Pittsburgh, which should be a good game as well on the road, as Pittsburgh has proven in the past that the ACC has to kind of run through Pittsburgh. If it's not running through Clemson, they're always that second or third best team. So North Carolina better wake up and have another great game if they want to get a win. Ole Miss has a big day, and they put away Georgia Tech early. Jackson Dart had 3 total touchdowns, almost over 400 total yards. They ran for 300 yards, and now they go into Bama, and they don't know who their quarterback is really going to be. And I think Ole Miss could go in there and pull off a shocking upset if they play the way they did against USF. Oregon, who I just talked about with Colorado, Bo Nix has looked great this year. Offense almost 600 yards in the blowout win against Hawaii. If they can put up 600 yards on Colorado, I think there's no way that Colorado can keep up. Oregon just has a little more, I think, in the tank and more chemistry in the locker room already, just because of the second-year coach. Stranger things have happened. It's going to be must-see TV, so make sure you come back next week to see who wins that game. Oregon State moves up 1 spot. They beat San Diego State, just coasted to that win. The defense had 6 sacks, but now they have their first true tough test. And if Washington State can win that game, there's no doubt in my mind they will be in my top 25 next week. If Oregon State wins that game, they might creep into number 10, possibly, depending on how many upsets happen next week. And DJ Ugalele needs to play a little bit better. I mean, I know he had 2 touchdowns here, but 2 interceptions against a semi-decent team. If they want to compete in the Pac-12, they need to start getting a better performance out of him. Utah stays at 12, and Cam Rising's the big question mark there. Is he going to be back in time for the UCLA game? And if not, then I think this Utah team might be in trouble. Nate Johnson, though, did have a decent game against Weber State. He can't have that kind of performance against UCLA if they want to win that game. Alabama falls back out of the top 10 after a very ugly win at USF, 17-3. The quarterback room barely threw over 100 yards, and it was relied on by Roydell Williams and Chase McClellan, 200 yards for the piece for both of them. And the defense, if they can show up and shut down Ole Miss, then I think that gives Alabama a chance to win this game. The defense gives up, I think, more than 20 points. I really think that Bama is going to struggle to keep up and possibly get upset at home against Ole Miss. LSU moves up to 10 over their very convincing win at Mississippi State. They just were all gas, no breaks since the beginning of this game. Jaden Daniels had a great game, 4 total touchdowns. Malik Neighbors, little over 200 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns. And now they get Arkansas at home. And it should be not as big of a blowout, but I think LSU is going to win big, as this team, really has got their gut punched since week 1 against Florida State, and they've looked like a completely different team these last 2 weeks. Notre Dame moves up 1 spot after they take care of business against Central Michigan, and now they get one of their many true tough tests this year, getting Ohio State to come to South Bend, and whoever wins this game is going to earn that top 5 ranking next week. Let's just put it that way. But Sam Hartman has really taken over Notre Dame this year, and everyone's got behind him, the media as well. But let's not forget about Audric Estimine, the running back here, having a great year and more than likely could find himself at the Heisman podium at the end of the year if he keeps up these big games and Notre Dame keeps on winning. But they got to keep on winning. That's the biggest thing heading into this week. USC won't talk about much. They run a bye last week. Caleb Williams obviously could put up some more video game numbers, the consensus #1 pick next year if he decides to go. And they should take care of business this week against Arizona State. But then they go to Colorado and Boulder, which should be a very hostile environment. So USC's first true tough test will come September 30th. Washington moves up 2, and this team, to me, has looked like the best scoring team in the nation outside of Oklahoma. Washington, 41 straight points to open the game and then let State score at the end with a late touchdown. The defense has looked better and better as for the first few games. Penix Jr., Heisman race, I don't doubt that he will be in New York at the end of the year if he keeps performing like this. And with his weapons on the outside, with Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk, it's going to be tough for Washington to slow down that high-powered offense. Against Cal, I expect another big blowout. 6 is Penn State. They go on the road and beat Illinois on Fox's big noon kickoff. And now they get Iowa at home in what should be a little tougher of a game. If the defense can force 5 turnovers like they did last week against Iowa, then I think Penn State coasts to another big win. Drew Aller didn't really have to do too much in this one, and I think next week he's going to be more involved, really trying to throw the ball down the field more and take advantage of Iowa. And, Iowa, we know, likes to run the ball and have a very slow moving offense, where Penn State, they can score on you in 4 plays. So if Penn State can get the game going how they want to early and dictate that, I think Penn State's going to walk away with a big W. Ohio State stays at 5, and nothing really to report here except they all showed up. Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson, and Kyle McCord all had great games. And you can see there the offense exploded for 35 points in the second quarter against Western Kentucky. But can they have a repeat performance against Notre Dame? I'm not talking 63 points. I'm talking if all 3 of those guys can show up and have a good game. And if that's the case, the Buckeyes could leave with a 1-possession win over Notre Dame in South Bend. But that's if they all play good. And we saw them week 1 when Harrison went down, McCord struggled. If that's the Ohio State team you get, then I think Ohio State might end up with a loss. Texas stays at 4 after a hangover win, as I like to call it. Wyoming kept Texas close throughout the first 3 quarters, but then Texas found their way in the fourth, scoring 21 straight to end the game. And the 2 big plays sparked it, a long passing touchdown, and then right after that, a pick 6. And right there, the energy got sucked out of Wyoming, and so you could tell this game was over. Quinn Ewers had a decent game. Jonathan Brooks pretty much took over in the trenches, 21 attempts, 164 yards. And they go to Baylor, which should be a very tough test just because Baylor has something to prove after their week 1 loss to Texas State. And if Baylor can get that win and upset Texas, I think all panic is going to break loose there for the Longhorns. Florida State's at 3 after a nail-biting win in Boston College. They struggled in the fourth quarter, didn't score, and let Boston College creep back in it the whole time. And somehow, some way, the defense stood tall when it matters most. Jordan Travis had another great game, and Keon Coleman was just not involved at all in this one. And if they want to go into Clemson and win that game, he has to be involved. And I know others stepped up for him, but one of the best transfers that was in the best wide receiver transfers from Michigan State came to Florida State. He has to be involved in this game plan against Clemson, or else I think you could see Florida State possibly lose this one. At 2 are my Michigan Wolverines. We finally get Harbaugh back going into this Rutgers game, a battle of the 3-0s. The defense looked awesome as usual, but the offense really kind of was in a rut the whole game. J.J. McCarthy did not look like himself in the last year and a half at this point. He had 3 interceptions, which is very unlike him, but he only threw the ball 13 times. So I think they really just wanted to make this let's just run the ball, coast to a win here. As you can see, Blake Corum, another 100-yard rushing game with 2 touchdowns. So much tougher test this week in the Big House against Rutgers at noon, but I expect Michigan to win this one. Now, with Jim Harbaugh back, I think you're going to see a better, crisp-looking Michigan Wolverine team. And at 1, you have the Georgia Bulldogs. And if Michigan would have completely blown Bowling Green out of the water here, I could have been tempted to move Georgia out of 1. And I didn't, because this team showed resiliency coming back from 14-3 at half. So scoring 21 points in the second half while not letting South Carolina score. That just shows to me that they are the number 1 team in the country. Carson Beck, great game efficiently, but it wasn't enough really to a point where he took over the game. It was more Dejon Edwards. He was the one that took over this game, and obviously the defense as well, because they limited Spencer Rattler in the second half as the offense couldn't get the ball moving. And now they should coast to an easy win against UAB, a good tune-up just in time for some more SEC games. But that's going to be it for this week's college football playoff rankings. Make sure you guys come back next week to see who my top 25 is after a great week of games. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.